Goal and try. Since '85 we've stood our ground, though trophies passed us by. From Craven Park to Wembley Way, with each toe grip we fight. Now we rise, our heads held high, proudly wearing the red and white.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are reputable East Hull-based car specialists and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members.
Red Army, we are back. Welcome to another episode of the Robin Pod Weekly, the place where we discuss all things Hull Kingston Rovers. It's been a roller coaster, but when isn't it? It's no different this time around. So we start by looking back at that desperate defeat to Wakefield. It was certainly a tough one to take. This is, of course, before we turn our eyes to Thursday night in what is yet set to be another massive showdown as we host the Warrington Wolves in the final regular league game of the season with the league leaders shield within our grasp. We'll also take a trip down memory lane as we celebrate the careers of Robin's favourite Kris Welham, with him recently announcing his retirement from rugby league. And with the end of season awards just around the corner, we'll get stuck into our predictions for the big one, the Roger Millward Player of the Season award. Of course, Steve Till is back with another classic Robins Revisited, and we'll be answering all your questions in question time. So grab a brew or two, get your voice ready and join us. It's all happening right here on the Robin Pod Weekly. Graham, welcome back to the Robin Pod. How have you been faring?
Not so bad, Jono. Thank you for having me back. Always a pleasure.
Well, I saw you on Saturday at Wakefield and we was in very high spirits. We're going to talk about the Wakefield game. I guess the spirits that I would have found you in post-game were very different pre-game.
Yeah, quite the opposite of the pre-match build-up and the anticipation of what could happen in terms of a good performance from us and getting the job done of the League Leaders Shield wrapped up in good time. That turned very quickly sour after about 15-20 minutes. There was an inevitability about the result, and the whole performance, I think, on the day was, I think Peters has already alluded to it, the worst 40 minutes of our season in terms of performance. So that doesn't fill us with confidence at the minute. However, we still have got that, as you said in your intro there, that opportunity in our own hands on Thursday night to rectify things.
Yeah, I mean, the final result was 28 points to 12. Of course, it was 26-0 at half-time. I'm going to take you back to what Willie Peters, some of his comments post-game when he was speaking to Matt Shaw from Rugby League. He said, I thought our effort, the way they scored their tries was far too easy. They ran harder, tackled harder, simple things in the game that they did better than us. When you don't get that right, you're often on the wrong end of the scoreboard. 26-0 was a fair reflection of how poor we were. It was fair. Quite damning, really, isn't it? Because although we can see it before our eyes, sometimes coaches, managers, they will try and sugarcoat it and pick out the positives and say, there's mitigating circumstances. But I think it was clear to see for all of us in the ground with a red and white, persuasion that was just a terrible, terrible first 40 minutes of rugby league. And what's really difficult, Graham, is that the head coach can't put his finger on why it was so bad. And the supporters, we can't put our finger on it. And I'm guessing, really, the only people who've got an answer to that question of why we were so bad is probably the players. Yeah,
I think it's, the brutal honesty in that statement you read out there was what I probably think every fan was thinking across the piece, certainly at half time. And Yeah, it wasn't pretty viewing at all. I'm sure the preparation was as good as it is and meticulous as it is every week. I'm sure that the run throughs that they've had all went well during the day. There was a little setback before the game with 𝗪𝗂𝗏𝗧 having to pull up, so there was a little bit of adversity there. But look, they should be able to react to that. That is not an excuse, and it was never ever used as an excuse. But that shouldn't affect too much about doing your jobs. And when you're looking back at the way the points were scored, that wasn't the way we usually concede points. People usually have to work really hard against us to score points. There was some tries there where they were literally waving them through to score. And yes, there was a couple of slips, and there was a knock on and a couple of bounces of the ball, etc. But it felt like Wakefield did to us what we've been doing to a lot of teams during the season. We didn't have an answer for that. We couldn't work that out, how to play against a style of play that was reminiscent of our own. And it was quite hard to watch at times. And again, as a fan, I think we've got used to watching us play really well. And again, it's how do we where I was stood, we were just looking around at each other saying, what the hell's going on here? Have we, we've got our boots on the wrong feet? Who have we turned out here? That we've still got a very strong team out, but Wakefield looked like the team very much in the ascendancy on the up, and we looked like one on the way down.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that starting lineup, of course, we welcomed Oliver Gildart back into the side.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of Robin supporters have been looking forward to, seeing him there. Of course, they want linking up with 𝗪𝗔. 𝗪𝗔's missed out that calf injury that we're going to mention, of course, when we look at the squad for the Warrington game. But he still had Broadbent outside of him. And you look across the lineup, yes, 𝗪𝗂𝗏𝗧 was a late withdrawal. He did the captain's run. He pulled up. Didn't pull up, but he felt tight on the day of the game. So that's the squad game. Jack Brown comes in and fills that role, and that's what we expect from our players, that the next cab off the rank comes in and does a job. But when you look at that starting lineup, there's no way you're looking at that going, well, we're a little bit weak whatsoever. And that, I think that's what the bewilderment amongst the Robin supporters is that he wanted a patched up Robin side. This was a side that we expect to go toe-to-toe with pretty much, I tell you what, that side, any side in Super League, and that goes right up to Wigan. So the fact that Wakefield rolled us over so easily in that first half, no wonder that we was all looking around in bewilderment. And to be fair, the Truman try, and then we saw the Jowett penalty after that. We're quite right to be thinking, well, don't worry about that, because we will come back into the game. We will get a foothold. What was really striking, was the Mason Leno try, who ultimately got the Man of the Match award. The way that he ghosted in between Jared Warrer-Hargreaves and Alec Minchella, and there was, if you watch it back on the replay, they both then look at each other and go, I thought it was your man, I thought it was my man. I do think, it's a tough one, because you've got Minchella going back from marker after making the tackle. Hargreaves seems to be slow-footed. He doesn't seem to be able to then shift the other way. Wakefield took full advantage of that, and that was where, for me, it felt like, where are we at? Because that's not a try that we've seen this season, really, when you look at, apart from certain games, but our defence has been much tighter than that, and there looked to be a big, big gap there, which probably a lot of people who stood on that terrace at Wakefield were thinking, wow, where's this come from?
Yeah, and we had the conversation where we were stood around, at this stage of the season, everybody's got bumps and bruises. So physically, we're in decent shape in the fact that we've got a good squad out there, very good squad out there. Wakefield had a good squad out there as well, but they had, a couple of injuries that they had to deal with as well. So that's sort of even that. So we were talking about the sort of mental fatigue that comes with playing pretty much every game, every week of the season so far. And looking back towards the Leeds game that we played 3, 4, 5 weeks ago now, it had the same hallmarks of that, where we just didn't have the ideas to combat a very direct, very strong, very busy Leeds team. That was the same for Wakefield on Saturday. I knew exactly how Wakefield were going to turn up after the result they had against Cars. I was expecting that Wakefield performance. What I wasn't expecting was the performance that we turned out. And I said that was very reminiscent of the feelings I had when we went away to Headingley a few weeks back, whereby I knew exactly how Leeds were going to play. We were way under where we needed to be, and found ourselves on the wrong end of a thick scoreline again. And it was just very, very similar in its makeup to that particular game. And the worrying bit for me at this stage of the season is we've had two of those performances, and sandwiched in between that, we've had narrow wins against Saints, relatively comfortable but not very high scoring game against Hull, and the attack seems to be struggling at the minute, whereas defensively we've managed to hold off Saints, we've held off Hull, etc. But now that's creaking a little bit as well. So I think it's just a little bit of worrying, and this next week of how we perform on Thursday night will give me a good clue as to where we're at heading into that week off, and then ultimately how we start to fire back up again in 2 weeks' time for that semi-final playoff.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it in last week's Robin pod about the attack, of course, coming on the back of the victory over that lot. Of course, I said it was only my view is that the attack looked a little bit clunky, and we seem to be a little bit one-sided in terms of our attack, in terms of if Mikey Lewis isn't really running up the line and really trying to make something happen, Tyrone Mays at the moment don't seem to be having that same threat on the other side. And we've seen it as well, Mikey Lewis now coming over to the other side and trying to... But we seem to have lost that attacking threat, what we had at the start of the season, and not the start, the midway, for most of the season, where the opposition defence didn't know whether, if it went left or right, how to counter that. Where it looks at the moment, it's very much about Mikey Lewis. And I dare say as well, over the past few weeks, we've seen Mikey Lewis take a fair few knocks where he doesn't, I don't know. He looks, to me, he looks fit, but at the same time, I can understand why other supporters may be questioning, is he actually fit? Because it just doesn't seem to have that dynamic step.
Yeah, well, whether they've worked that out as a defensive unit, because he is doing so much, it's quite predictable now as to, look, if it goes to Lewis, he's either going to do this or the other. We haven't got that variety. And what we talked about sort of on the drive home was that it looks like he's trying too hard to make something happen, that the ball's coming his way, which is great, and he gets his hands on it and he's got the opportunity to sort of run, to bring other people into play. But he's having to do too much of that, and therefore you can just shuffle across and keep those gaps really small so that he can't dart through, which we've seen him do, or he can't offload to somebody and go through a big steaming hole in defence. That's quite predictable. What we also noticed, Jono, was that 𝗬𝗏 was taking a lot of the attacking kick options when it wasn't Lewis and it wasn't May doing it. May wasn't doing it. It was 𝗬𝗏, and that was a noticeable shift in tactic. Whether it was deliberate or not, I'm not quite sure, but it was a noticeable shift to note that from an attacking perspective, May didn't have his hands on the ball as much to dictate play, and that last play option sometimes landed with 𝗬𝗏.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Tyrone May's positional play, his defence that he offers up on that side really does tighten up, doesn't it? And you can see on that edge, they are so tight. But that's only one element of the game, and what we've, what we need is that when we play these big games coming to the back end of the season, we need all our real attacking players to be firing on all cylinders. And some people said, well, since Tyrone May got that new contract and it's been extended, we've not really seen then the best of him. He seems to have regressed over the course of the season. Don't get me wrong. I mean, what I found scandalous is that a lot of people pointing fingers at Tyrone May, particularly at the start of the season, about, since he's been at the club, sort of his style of play and it's, he's quite laid back and it's not something that a lot of people like to see. He's always we joked about, haven't we, Graham, in the past, where he's always the last man in the warm-up. He's always, and all that bit for me has been nonsense. But on the serious side I do think we're a little bit unbalanced, and I think we're relying a little bit more now on Ata coming back from fullback to really cover Tyrone May's attacking abilities. So, hey, look, we are going into playoffs. I'm touching as much wood as I can. We are going to be going as league leaders, so which gives us a home playoff spot, and we're going to get a decent break. And I think Willie Peters will be pleased for that, because no doubt there's going to be things that they're going to work on. But it came apparent, especially in that first half against Wakefield and a few, the other games before against FC. I mean, even against Saints, we did a real good job at shutting them out. But it wasn't a flare game. We didn't see lots of attacking. Even when you go back to the Wigan victory,
Yeah, but you look at the last game we scored 20 plus points in. It was weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We got 10 or 12 against Wigan, 10 or 12 against Saints, 18 against FC, 12 against Wakey, 6 against Leeds. So you have to go back quite a way and you go back 6-8 weeks, and we were consistently putting high 20s, 30 points on teams. And something's changed. And I don't know exactly what it is, but whether whether people have worked us out, whether they've found tactics to negate and nullify our threats, but we just don't look. And I think you mentioned the word clunky. We just don't look as slick as we have done in the sort of mid-season part, where we were getting those high 20s, 30s week in, week out. We just don't look as slick as that, and I don't know what the reason for that is.
Well, to play devil's advocate, Graham, as well. If you look at the opposition over the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so they're all teams in the playoffs vying for a.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
We're not playing the Huddersfields. We played Castleford not that long ago, and look how many points. That's probably the last time that we put decent points on the side was Castleford. The run into the end of the season. This is what actually was pointed out. I think it was prior to the Wigan game that actually, when you look at the running for the teams that were vying for the top 1, top 2 positions, who had the easiest, even the top 4, who had the easiest running? Well, I think it was pointed out that the Robins had the most difficult, because every side that they were coming up pretty much was vying for a spot in the playoffs or end of season 1, 2 or 3. So that said, I think that is probably worth pointing out that we have come up against sides who need to win. They're playing for something. Yeah,
no, that's a fair point. And again, you look at those 6 games, and we've come up short against Leeds and we've come up short against Wakey. We've turned Saints over, we've turned Wigan over. Big games in the. You said, would you take that at the beginning of the season? 1 game to go, 2 points ahead, top of the league? Absolutely, you would. Absolutely, and it's a fair point that we've been playing those teams in and around the top 6. And yeah, I guess it's a fair challenge to say, why should we be scoring 20 plus points against those? Because they are in the positions they're in for a reason. They are good teams, and that's maybe going back to my mental fatigue comment, because we looked a bit leggy in attack on Saturday. And I just, points aside, I just don't think we've been, from an attacking perspective, dominating teams like we have been in that mid part of the season. Regardless of whether we scored tries on it, we aren't creating the tries, opportunities that we were early doors. And, how often in that first half were we out of our own half? I was constantly looking towards that right-hand side for probably 80%, 90% of that first half. We had literally 1 or 2 opportunities down the other end of the field, and that was it, and we bombed them.
Yeah, I mean, we can bleat on about the defence and how bad it was. Mikey Lewis's missed interception, we saw, he loves going for that ball. He got it wrong that time. That led to the Max Showett try. I think what showed me about our defence again was the Cameron Scott try, where they got the overload on the right. Don't get me wrong, Oliver Gildart coming back, he looks a little bit rusty. Broadbent, they had the overload. Gildart got turned inside, and it wasn't a great try, and we're reeling at that point, aren't we? And there's no way back. We're talking about attacking play. We saw the best of our attacking play when 𝗬𝗂𝗧 goes in for his try, and that is everything that we've seen the Robins do this season in terms of the luckily offload, Mace shipping the ball out as quick as he can, the ball back inside from 𝗵𝗂𝗧, and then Morg runs through. That was the best of the Robins. Unfortunately, it was just too little too late ultimately in the end.
But I would probably challenge that, John, and suggest that came on the back of a rocket up the arse at half time.
Yeah. Which shouldn't be needed, should it? Because if it takes that to get us to do that, or any team, if it takes the rocket to prompt that type of reaction, then there's a shift needed. But that's the line in the sand is done for me on that one. The second half performance was better from a point scoring perspective and a performance level perspective. However, it was never going to be enough to claw that 26 point margin back. I don't know whether Wakey were just sort of keeping us at bay a bit, but we definitely didn't have that one-way traffic going towards our left in that second half. So that's an encouragement that our performance did pick up after the potential rocket up the backsides, and that'll have been a collective rocket that the players will have recognised as well. So that side of it is a positive. The fact that we were able to claw 12 points back off the points difference, albeit 10 with that penalty that they scored, eases a tiny bit of pressure off that points against and points for column. So there was a few scraps of positives. I'm really sort of scrambling around for some to take away from it. The fact that Gildart hopefully got through unscathed with his 80 minutes and is lined up again this week. He'll put more minutes in his legs. In another positive. There wasn't much else to take away from it. That debrief, learn from it, and we move on to Thursday night. Yeah, and to be fair, as we took our vantage point on that terrace, when you see our white shirted leader on the touchline, it's a sign
that early in the game. Yeah.
It's something that we're not very accustomed to. But when you do see Willie Peters out on the touchline, it's not going well. And I think Willie Peters has said that he wanted to be close to the players to almost hear what they're saying, to see their body language, to what you can't obviously do when you're stuck up in the stands. I reckon there must be a lot of home truths. There must be a lot of soul searching going on post this game in terms of when they rocked up back at training, because I think Willie had been hurt from this. I think this season in the big games we've come out on top. We've shown up. We've done the job. This was a big game. This was a game to seal the league leaders' shield for the only time in our Super League history. So make no mistake about it, this was a big game. And I think Willie will be hurting from this because I think the way they've trained, he said, didn't he, that training's been as good as it's ever been. There's been nothing he could see. The only difference, like you said, Graham, was Tanganoa not being able to then play because he felt tight. Preparation's been brilliant. Yeah. So what has happened over going over the whitewash to go onto the pitch, which is why ultimately we saw Willie Peters on the touchline, because he wanted to be as close to them players as possible to try and read them, to try and listen to them, to try and understand, and like you said, to see if they would respond to what he said to them at half time. But ultimately the game was gone.
Yeah, it was, and there's only so much you can do in that second half in terms of repairing the damage, and to an extent we managed to stem the tide and get a couple of decent tries on the board as well. So that aside, I think you mentioned about Peters will be hurting. I think first and foremost the players are honest enough with themselves that they will be hurting as well. This is not the sort of performance that they will want to serve up for themselves, for the club. First and foremost, so I do not doubt that there will be an internal reaction from the players of that, not being the Hull KR type of performance we want to turn out. So I'm fully expecting on Thursday evening them to come out absolutely firing to prove a point that yes, it's happened on Saturday. We get over it. We reset. We go again.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to some supporters, they'll question Chris Kendall about his way, and not the first time over the last few weeks where referees been questioned about how they've controlled the ruck along the lay-on. I mean, if you looked at Wakefield, there's some accusations of them being consistently offside, not standing square at the markers. But really, when you look at the scoreline, you know, they're all things that can be countered, aren't they?
Yeah, if you're reliant on that's a poor excuse for me.
Oh, that scoreline as well.
Yeah. That you know, the referee will have the control over that. He should monitor that for both teams. So I'm not having any of that it was the ref's fault or anything like that. This one was fairly and squarely down on the players' performance for me on Saturday night. There's not a 𝗀𝗂𝗃𝗧 performance that we're used to this season. And look, the referees, I would say we all love to hate them, don't get me wrong. And do they get everything right? No. Do they get the vast majority of stuff right? Yes, I think they do. And sometimes it'll go for you, sometimes it'll go against you. But on the whole, they get the calls right. And look, if they are, penalising for laying, as long as they're consistent, that's all fans want. So if they're allowing 3 or 4 seconds for Wakey, then you expect them to leave 3 or 4 seconds for Rovers. And if that's the way he's controlling the game, he should, make that clear to the players, and then they know, and we get on with the game in that respect. I don't think there's anything we can do to influence that. It's how the referee's controlling the game, and it's their prerogative to do so. The players will just get on with it. We as fans might not like some of the decisions. We vent our frustrations, but ultimately, I think they get most of the things right.
Yeah, one player who's definitely coming in the spotlight at the moment, and that's, across the board, is 𝗪𝗏 and just his efforts in terms of trying to do things on his own, trying to influence, trying to rush out the line, trying to make them big hits, trying to, and what we keep seeing is he's giving penalties away at really key points, or he's missing tackles, and no one's dismissing his enthusiasm, but he's not the only player, but he's a player where just do your job, just hit. He's such an impactful player. Hit the line. If you get the offload it. If you don't, keep it. In your defence, run up with your other forward. Don't rush out like you've got to smash something. And we're getting caught out sometimes. And it's interesting because Hargreaves was another one who got hooked earlier than I think. And it's not the first time this season he's done it. And what blows my mind sometimes, Graham, is this is at that time, it was the most experienced player on the pitch in terms of his age, and also what he's done in his career. And it's almost like you don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to go through the motions, but you don't need to prove yourself. Just do the job for your team.
Yeah, and again, I'd like to think that's a passion for wanting to make a difference, as opposed to just a hot-headedness of going out there. We've seen earlier in the season, midpoint of the season, where as a unit defensively, we've been collectively together. But like you say, there's these odd occasions where somebody will go off and do something and they get exposed. Either, they have to leave a lazy arm out there, or they go flying out and they give away a penalty. That wasn't evident in the first sort of big block of the season. We were very cohesive in that defensive unit and very, very difficult to break down. And it seems or it looks like from the average fan's perspective, that we're stepping away from that mantra that we've been so successful with throughout the vast majority of this season, and it's costing us penalties, and they're ultimately impacting on points scored against us on key occasions. So as we get to this back end of the season where it really, really matters, we have to go back to the basics of the defensive efforts we put in as a collective unit, and not fire off in 1s and 2s. It has to be those 3s and 4s, and everything just needs to be rock solid in that middle.
Yeah, right. We've got Warrington up next. We've got so much more to talk about. Let's draw a line under that Wakefield game. It's done and dusted. We can't go back and change it. Yeah, I can't wait to erase that from my memory. Let's kickstart our build up to Warrington game with Robins revisited with Steve Till, who takes us back down memory lane with a game against Warrington. Steve, welcome back to the Robin Pod for the last regular league fixture of the season. Of course, we take on Warrington Wolves on Thursday night. Which game are you going to take us back to this time?
One which most of us will remember, I think, Chris. We're going to go back to the semi-final 10 years ago, semi-final of the Cup, where we played Warrington at Headingley. And we took on a strong. Warrington were favourites. We took on a strong Warrington team. When you look at it, they had Ratchford, who was just retiring. They had O'Brien still playing. Myler, we know where he is. They had Curry, Harrison, and Darrell Clark, and Chris Hill. So that, those are players that are still playing. Whereas the Rovers team, very few were still playing. The Rovers team was Dixon, Mantellato, Welham, Salter, Seo, Blair, Kelly. Anybody heard of Kelly? Walker, Lund, Pulatua, Laroya, Horn, and McCarthy, with Budebza, Donaldson, Green, and Tills on the bench. Just mentioning one there, Chris, we've got to pay tribute to Kris Welham, because Kris Welham played his final game of the weekend. He scored a try. He was given a try. And the players, I've seen the try and I've seen the celebrations from the Sheffield players, because they obviously held Kris in the same esteem as Rovers fans did. And I can remember when Kris Welham broke into the Rovers team, because Justin was in charge. And we'd signed some Chev Walker, and we'd got the New Zealander. I've forgotten his name now, but Jake Webster, of course it is. Well, I can remember Justin. I was talking to Justin. He says, "I'm thinking of putting Kris Welham in the team for the opening fixtures," and I'd watched him all pre-season, and I said to Justin, "How can you leave him out? He's been playing brilliant," and he made his debut under Justin. Anyway, he played in this match, and well done to Kris, by the way, and I'm sure you'll back me up on that. Kris, he's a superb player. But Rovers really in this match caused a massive upset, didn't they? They went 4-0 down after 6-0 down after a couple of minutes, and the Rovers fans in the 13,000 crowd at Headingley must have thought, what we're going to get here. But they kept their heads after trailing to that Ryan Atkins try, and so we next got Mantellato went in the corner. And after he'd converted his own kick, Seo, do you remember Kenny Seo leaping above Gene Ormsby to collect Kelly's up and under and to go in the right-hand corner? Again, Mantellato converted, and it was Rovers that went in 12-0 in front. And then he added two more goals, first to convert Laroya's 47th minute try, and then with a penalty that put Rovers 20 points to 6 in front. Warrington finished 4 places above Rovers in 6th when the Super League season had ended, and they pulled it back to 2018, and we were panicking again. There were tries from Myler and Curry, both converted by O'Brien, and then there was 12 minutes to go and we were 2 points up. But it was Rovers who got the last score when Warrington failed to stop Stuart Lunt in the tackle, and the hooker wriggled his way to the line. Mantellato converted, and it took his individual tally to 14 points. I used to love Josh Mantellato. His kicking was fantastic. Anyway, so Rovers celebrated, the fans celebrated with a new song that day. I don't know how it came about, but a little respect, and they got a lot of respect from the rugby league after beating Warrington in this semi-final. And the song exists still today. We open all the matches with it, and whoever started that, well done. But it was a great day for Rovers. We know what happened afterwards in the final. We don't want to talk about that. But that semi-final was probably, for many, many Rovers fans, the biggest day they'd ever been to.
Welcome back to the Robin Pod, Graham. Of course, Steve there, great memories. Of course, that semi-final will be long etched in the memory of many Rove supporters. But he mentioned a former Robin there who's recently announced his retirement from rugby league, Kris Welham. A great servant to the game, his 450th appearance on Sunday. Of course, a fan favourite with the Robins faithful, over 190 appearances, over 100 tries. He made his debut back in 2006 alongside his brother, and of course, he scored a try in debut. He was a try scorer many seasons. He finished in double figures. Of course, he had the chance to win silverware back in 2015 in the Challenge Cup final. That didn't quite happen. And a player who's just enjoyed a long career in rugby league. He retires at the age of 38. A great servant to rugby league. A great servant for not only 𝗀𝗂𝗃𝗃 but Bradford Bulls. Of course, Salford, where he's become a bit of a cult hero, playing in a Challenge Cup final again and the grand final. He's played for Featherstone. He's had a good career at Sheffield. He's probably, Graham, one of them players where you'll find it'll be very hard to find someone to have a bad word to say about him, and not only because he's just a nice kid and he's very great to get on with, but he's a good player, just a good rugby league player who's probably a coach's dream. When in terms of if you set a game plan and you want him to do a job, he'll deliver and he'll do it. And Kris Welham, he deserves his testimonial season, which he's now enjoying. He's got many events coming up. He's going to be coming up on the Robin Pod because we've done a heritage podcast where we talked about his career with Hull Kingston Rovers, and we're going to be getting him on to talk about his experiences in rugby league, but also his upcoming testimonial season because, you know, sometimes there's just good guys who need a bit of support and need the applause because they've had a good career.
Yeah, absolutely, John. And I think you said a great servant to rugby league, and you've touched on it there. He's also a great guy as well. I had the pleasure a couple of times of saying hello to him back in the day. And all the things that Steve alluded to there, that you've alluded to there. Great servant for rugby league, first and foremost. But, you know, we had the pleasure of seeing Kris and his brother at the same time as well, which was quite a unique experience for them both, being able to pull on the red and white, with people like the caliber of Jake Webster, we know what impact he made at Rovers as well. For Welly to be in that same bracket of centre, over 100 tries, I think you said as well. It takes some doing at that particular level. So great to see. Obviously great to see him hang up his boots. I'm sure he'd love to carry on, but I'm sure his body is telling him a little bit different, but great to see the recognition and the plaudits that he's getting, the great, the really kind words that people are saying, because I think genuinely he is a really nice guy as well. And there was one time, it was back in the day when you used to get physical cards for your season passes, and I got a knock on the door once, and it really, it was, I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock at night. I was thinking, who the heck's that? And bizarrely,
was it the police?
Yeah. No, normally usually have a quick look out the curtains and then go and answer the door, but went straight to the door. And bizarrely, it was Sean Briscoe and Kris Welham handing me my season ticket. And, bizarre, we just had a quick 5-10 minute conversation with them both. And, just a genuinely nice guy. great to see that he's had that length of career as well. When the opportunity to come play Super League with Salford, get to the grand final, etc., shows the quality of player that he is. Many of our newer members to the club and younger followers of Hull I might not know who he is, what he's done, but go and have a look at some of the old historical games and watch Kris play. Very good centre, very good defensively as well. Nothing but positive comments from me, and echoing what Steve had said there a few minutes ago, and the build-up that you've given as well. Really, really glad that he's getting some recognition for a fantastic career, sort of spanning the best part of 2 decades, basically.
Yeah, and our rise in Super League. And of course, you mentioned the history there, not forgoing the fact that his father-in-law is Gary Wilkinson. So people who've got long memories will remember Gary. So there's going to be lots of events coming up. It's really important that we support our former players, not only just any former player, but people who have really contributed to the history and heritage of Hull Kingston Rovers. So let's see what's Kris Welham's got coming up. It's going to be really interesting. We'll get him on the Robin Pod. Before then, Graham, let's go to before we build up to the Warrington game. Actually, we're going to talk about the player end of season award ceremony that's taking place on Saturday evening at the Connection Arena. Now, Graham, before we recorded this, I spoke to you. I tell you what, this is the only professional sports team in the country that I know, and I've checked this out, that does a player of the end of season award ceremony in front of a crowd that we do it in front of. So I'm talking Premier League football, I'm talking Rugby Union Premiership, I'm talking all your major team sports. I can't find another team that does an award ceremony in front of 1,000 plus up to 2,000 people that invites all of the fans to come and witness it. And this season, they've made it more accessible than ever by offering £5 tickets. So you can go watch this end of season awards ceremony for £5. I can't think of a club. I think it's an amazing thing to do. It's something that people need to get behind because it's unique. Like I said, I can't think of another sport, another team, another club that does this. So fair play to Hull Kingston Rovers and all the people behind the scenes who've done that. But who do you think will be the player of the year this season, Graham?
I'll answer that in a second, but like you, John, I want to pay credit to the club for the innovation on this one and the ability, historically these are sort of black tie affairs and corporate events.
Behind closed doors, aren't they? They're for the big spenders. Which is right. Like, don't get me wrong, but
but for the ability for fans to attend the same event for a fraction of the cost of what it would cost to buy a table at one of these events,
I tell you what, the tables will be going for. So if you go you'll be there. The tables 500, 600 quid at least, and you're in the same room. And what's great as well is it's not about the people who spend the big money. It's not about the people who spend the little money. It's about just all us Rover supporters being in that room. Yeah,
and I think the access you mentioned the words is so accessible now for us to be able to do that. That if you're not fortunate enough to be invited as one of those tables, you do have the opportunity to see that. And again, I think it was last year or the year before. I couldn't attend, but managed to watch it live streamed on YouTube, I think it was at the time as well. So again, just that innovation of engaging the fans, of being part of, we've been with them all season, and for this event to be a behind closed doors event, it doesn't feel right. So whoever's sort of the creative thinking behind this, well played to them, because it's now made it more open and accessible. Like you say, for a £5, you can go and attend that event. There'll be a good atmosphere there. I'm sure there'll be a few songs and chants and whatever to help create that environment and that atmosphere and add to the occasion. So, yeah, for anybody who's looking for something to do on Saturday evening, get yourself over to the Connection Arena, £5. doors open. I think it was 5:45, was it, John, or something like that?
Yeah.
Just seeing the lineup of who's sort of presenting. Jenna's there from Sky, and I think John Wilkins there, and
Mikey North from Coronation Street.
Yeah, for a lot of Coronation Street fans, Mikey North's there, big Rovers fan, but don't let the fact John Wilkins there put you off from going. He's the whole lad. So yeah, it'd be great if we could get as many red and whites there as possible to support that event.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Well, I'll tell you what. Last season, let's run you through some of the players who won awards last season, Graham, because the big one is the Roger Millwood Player of the Season. Last year it was 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏, of course, Captain Fantastic. Michael Lewis was second, and then they had a joint third place, 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏 and Dean Hadley. The members player, this is the one that we can vote on as season pass holders. So people have probably seen, if you're listening to this like right now, you can go and vote for your player of the season. It was Mikey Lewis. He got that award. The player's player, which has huge gravitas, and don't underestimate how important that is to them. Dean Hadley came out number 1. Michael Lewis was number 2, and 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏 number 3. We saw Dean Hadley get the Community Player of the Season. Young Player of the Year went to Conor Barley. So it's going to be interesting to see how them awards shape up this season. But the Roger Millwood Player of the Season, or the Players Player, Graham, for you, who do you think's been the player who deserves that top trophy this season?
Yeah, so I tend to look at this sort of quite different over the course of the season, rather than it's hard to remember what happened in Game 3 of the season and who was playing well then. So I've gone for someone who I think has been consistent throughout the season and whose stock has risen greatly over the course of the last couple of years. And for me, a lot of the great stuff that this guy does is now starting to be recognised, and could potentially be recognised even further come post-season. So I've gone for Jez Litton.
Yeah, and when you look at the potential for him in the Ashes and his stock, how that's, and also the prominence that's come about in the fact that he's had to then cover potentially a player who might not have been played. So Mickey McIlaurin, how he's then risen to the challenge of filling in that space and not only fill that space, excel in that position.
But I looked at as well, if you think about last season, John, we had Matt Parcell in there with Jez Litton as under. So the responsibility of Jez coming in and being that dominant number 9 for the vast majority of games, where we know McIlaurin's 20, 25 minutes, and then Jez came on at the beginning of the season. But when McIlaurin's been in, Jez has gone many 80-minute games, putting in very, very, very consistent levels of performance, attacking threat, the kicking game's not too shabby either. The run threat's there. Defensively, he's been rock solid this year as well. So for me, he was one, again, along with some of the familiar names that you mentioned already, Dean Hadley as well. Just such a consistent performer he's probably performed even better this season than he did last season, for me, in my opinion. So for me, those two have been the most consistent performers. And if you look at the number of games that they've missed, it is quite minimal across the course of a season.
Yeah, and I mean, no one's going to argue with that, are they? And it's interesting. We don't know when I was trying to check to see where when they do the Super League Dream Team, when that's announced, and because last season it was on the same day as a Player of the Season award, so we had 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏, Michael Lewis rushing back to the Connections Arena on the back of them being named in the Super League Dream Team. One player who I'm looking at, because you look at the Roger Millwood Player of the Season, I think Jez Litton will get that Players Player. I don't think I'm looking at. Do you know who I think? Jack Broadbent. I think he's been a Players Player this season. The way he's filled in.
I would agree, and I'm going to throw another name in there in Tom Davies as well.
I'll throw another name, Sam Luckley. We could be all right.
Yeah, I'll throw another name in there.
Yeah.
But again, I think both Broadbent, Tom Davies, come in and nailed down regular spots into that and performed again at high levels. I think Davies is a consistent threat out of backfield. It gets through a ton of work that helps out our forwards no end. Got his fair share of tries. He's up there as well in putting points on the board for us. And I think there was that fear when we lost Ryan Hall at the back end of last season of what was it we're going to get. And I think every Rovers fan would be very, very pleased with the way that Davies has slotted into that role and responsibility. And dare I say, yes, they're different players, but dare I say we haven't seen a drop-off from what we were getting dished up by Ryan Hall each week, which was, again, so consistent. And that's just carried on seamlessly with Davies coming into the mix. And let's not forget, he got that try at Wembley for us as well.
Yeah, well, you know what? When you get to the end of the season award ceremonies, it's the hardest job. Like, whatever level of sport you're at, whether it's grassroots, Graham, whether it's the professional, to try and really pinpoint, some of the really... When you're on the back of a successful season as well, it's the toughest job in the world, isn't it? To pinpoint individuals. So, yeah, we look forward to Saturday night. It's going to be a great occasion. We're really, really interested to see who gets the awards. But when you look at that first team squad, everyone's played their part in the success. So, yeah, let's see what happens. I'm not going to spend so much time talking about the game on Thursday, Graham. The lineups are Joe Burgess is missing. We know he's got a calf injury. He is expected to be back for the semi-final in the playoffs. We've seen him missing for the last 2 games, 21 tries in 23 games. He's a big miss, but we can counter that. Reece Martin, of course, he comes back into the squad on the back of his 2-game suspension. 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗴𝗏, who was in the squad but missed the game, he's still in there. The big one is 𝗪𝗪𝗪. Graham, he's Willie Peters talks so fondly about him, about his professionalism, his level of consistency. Just going back to that Wakefield game, we've probably missed that, and he'll be a welcome addition to the side on Thursday night.
Yeah, I think, like you, we've seen some really, really good stuff from Jessie this season. I just hope that he's fully fit to play on Thursday. We're not rushing it back for the sake of getting him game time and potentially doing him more harm than good, because he's obviously got a week off the week after. So if he doesn't play on Thursday night, he's got to go 2 more weeks without playing and then come potentially straight back into that semi-final cauldron. So I think it'd be wise to get minutes in his legs if he's available to do so. But look, we've said it all season about trusting the medical team, trusting the coaching staff. They'll make the right call on who's fit to play and who's not. So we'll trust whatever 17 or 18 that gets put on that team sheet is the right one for Thursday night.
Yeah, Warrington have named a 20-man squad, not your traditional 21-man, which shows you where they are. I mean, they are in a hole. You only have to look at their result against that lot to see how bad they really are. They've named a squad that includes Matt Duffy, Toby King, Joe Philbin, Sam Powell, Mark Sneed and Danny Walker. Other than that, they are, academy players, reserve grade players, young hopefuls. So, that squad's probably not, what they put out against Hull. He's not even as close to that. I mean, don't get me wrong, if Duffy plays, Mark Sneed plays, Sam Powell plays, Danny Walker plays, I've got a bit of a spine. But when you chip away at that, they've not got a lot to offer. And I think the Sam Burgess's comments post the Hull FC game was quite telling, in that when he talks about putting a side out, he was talking about putting a side out to compete, not to get a result. That's not to be said. You can't take any team lightly, Graham. We've been in this position before where we've took teams lightly, but the odds, the playing ability, the fitness levels are heavily stacked in the Robins' favour, and we shouldn't not be expecting a victory on Thursday night.
Yeah, I think we should, and I think we should use that as a motivation to go for it. There's no, we've got no excuse, is what I'm saying here. We've got a strong squad out there. They've not. We've got no excuse for any of that. So we need to go out with the positive mindset of, tearing them a new one, basically, to finish that season off, send everybody off for a week's break in a real positive mood, leave them at the players' camp in a real positive spirits before that enforced week's rest, and then watch the carnage unfold next week and hope the teams who are playing each other bash heck out of each other, and they turn up patched up to whichever team it is that's coming to us the week after that. They turn up patched up with a squad that we can have a go at fully fresh again.
Yeah, and I mentioned 𝗬𝗂𝗧𝗏's comments post the Wakefield game. I'll give you another statement that he put out. I'll comment. He said when he was asked about his thoughts about team selection for next week, which is of course Thursday night, and this was post the Wakefield game. If you're asking me right now, the disciplinary points are the furthest thing from my mind. We need to pick a team that's going to go out and perform and improve. Whether we change our mind, we'll have a look in a couple of days. Now, of course, a victory against Wakefield have afforded them the luxury of potentially resting players, particularly the ones who are on the cusp of being banned. 𝗬𝗲𝗏 is only half a point away from a one-game ban. So, of course, he only needs to pick up a grade A charge. Dean Hadley is a grade B charge away from a ban. I suppose the flip side to that is, though, Graham, if you rest them for the Wakefield game and you play them in the semi-final, you still risk missing them. The mentality is, for me, and what 𝗬𝗂𝗧𝗏 seems to like about playing his players, is that if you're fit, you play, and you can't be too clever.
Yeah, and he's not shacked away from that all season. That was a noticeable shift, wasn't it? Week before Challenge Cup final, we all had those trepidations about what sort of team would he play. I think it was Saints we played the week before, wasn't it? And we played our strongest team. We played to our strengths. We played our normal game. We didn't worry about anything else. So I think that's been his mentality all season, is if you're fit and you're one of my best 17, 18 players, you're playing. And if we cop a ban somewhere along the line or penalty points, so be it. Next man up. It could be one of those that if we get the game put to bed early enough on Thursday night, that look, 𝗬𝗏𝗏 gets hauled and Leyland gets a good stint, 50, 60 minutes after we've done that, and we don't need to do anything. Then in that case, we guarantee 𝗬𝗏𝗏 in the semi-final. So, but then there's nothing to stop 𝗬𝗏𝗏 getting a penalty point in the semi-final and missing the final. So, you've just got to put that at the back of the mind and play the game the right way within the rules that doesn't give the referee or the people who sit on those review panels any reason to look at your incidents, and just get on with the game and play and hopefully do the job that we're all expecting on Thursday night. No dramas, get it wrapped up. Let's have that shield on the sideboard, and then let's get the feet up for a week and then start prepping for that semi-final the week after.
Yeah, 100%, which leads us to question time, Graham. Michael Maffey, going back to the Wakefield game, it's a great point. Why did our players seem to be losing their footing at Wakefield, but Wakefield's didn't? Different studs play. It was noticeably with 𝗬𝗏𝗏, it seemed to be the 2 or 3 times where
Lewis did it as well. Yeah, we noticed Lewis did it as well.
It seems to be very soft, but all I'd say is, Craven Park's not the hardest ground, is it? In terms of whether they underestimated it or not, in terms of the studs or boots, I don't know.
Not sure, but we sort of commented how, I think it was on before the game, obviously, but we commented how good the pitch looked on Saturday. So there's no excuses from that. Yes, it absolutely battered it down for 15, 20 minutes beforehand and give it a good soaking. But you would expect that's one of the fine elements of detail that players or staff take account of. The weather conditions. Is it windy? What's the underfoot like? Is it soft? Is it hard? What boots do we need? That should be part of the preparation. And if the studs they've got in aren't suitable for that, then do you know what? Go and change them. That should be part of the preparation. Whether Wakefield were just on top of that and it affected us more than them, I don't know. We don't know.
Small margin, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's the 1% bits, John. It's those attentions to detail that can have a big impact. Lewis was flat on his back for one of the tries, and there was left a gaping hole. That was 6 points because of that particular slip. Now, would he have slipped in a different pair of boots? We never know, but that's the sort of, like you say, small margins.
Yeah, and I didn't read. I read part of this question previously in preparation for the Robin Pod, and I've just read the second bit. Anyway, Graham, I'll hit you with the first bit. As Willie Peters' policy of not resting players rotating the squad more now showing, with some players looking mentally and physically fatigued. So obviously, something you alluded to about the Wakefield game, more so about the mental side more than the physical side.
Yeah, and I think there was a excuse me. I think there was a stat. It was either the whole game or one of the games anyway. They put up the stat around. I think we've only used like 25 players this season.
It's been a tight-knit group, hasn't it?
Yeah, which you could look at one of two ways, and it means the medical staff and that are doing a fantastic job to keep our best players on the pitch and fit. But then does that come at a consequence if we've played every single week, barring that one rest week?
And even when the likes of, for instance, Eric Dorrow, Jack Brown, Bill Leyland, they've not come on and played, almost like first team minutes. They've played supporting minutes.
Yeah.
Hence why Jai Whitbread has probably played more minutes. I'd love to see, off the top of my head, more minutes this season than he's probably ever played before, because he's gone from prop to second row and he's been moulded into that, because there is a first team core.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting comments that Peters made was around they've prepped in the pre-season for the players to play this long season. So they'll have all the data, all the stats on the loads that the players are doing during the week in training, during the matches, the minutes, etc. So they'll know all that and almost be able to tell before the players do when they're ready for a stint on the sidelines. So again, trusting the science on that and trusting the team behind the team on that. It's that interesting dynamic of saying, has this team now, does it need a week off? Probably. How did they use that week? Is it used to recharge? Because there have been players, Minchella, I think he's missed one game, the Catalan away game maybe, and that was it. He's played in every game. There'll be other players like that who've played lots and lots of minutes. Is that now catching up with them? And is that why we're appearing to look a bit leggy? Is that why, attacking wise, we can't make tackle busts because of that small amount of depletion of what we could do before is now only 5% less, but it means that we aren't busting through tackles. We aren't creating those half chances that were exploited earlier in the season. I don't know the number and the data, and the science will tell you that behind the scenes, but it could be. And then you look at the other side of the coin, and if we would use a lot more players, then you wouldn't get the cohesion, you wouldn't get that tightness, you wouldn't get the combinations week in, week out. So there's two ways of looking at it. But again, can't said it often enough on this podcast, Jono, we've got to trust in Peters and the team behind the team to make those right calls. They're in a much more advantageous position than you or I.
Yeah, and trusting Willie Peters. I mean, Ian Dixon, the second part of his post, and you know what? This is what the Robin Pod's about, because whether you agree or disagree with opinion, this is an opportunity for people to have an opinion. He puts, with hindsight, it's a pity we didn't pay Jared Hargreaves off after Wembley and sign Tom Amon. ... Very disappointing second half of the season. But ultimately, it was never going to happen, was it? And I've mentioned Jared Hargreaves and his performance against Wakefield and why some people might question it and why some people question it. But ultimately, he is a champion. He's a champion on and off the pitch. And what he's brought to this club, we can only see a percentage of what he brings. The real effort is off it, and and also he has contributed on the pitch. But I understand why Ian might be saying about, because it's very easy for us as supporters to go bring him out, take that in. But the game's played over a long time. But David Blaney puts, Dave, great to hear from you. Hope you're doing well, mate. I know you've been struggling. You've not been able to get to the game, so it's great to see that you're still engaging and you're contributing. So, are we mature enough as a team and a club to talk about winning trebles? We've made significant progress on and off the pitch this year, but personally, we need further consistency and more development in a lot of areas to achieve this. It's interesting, we've got the potential to win a double, which has not been within our grasp for God knows how long. We're talking about winning a treble, and I suppose it's that point of if all we do is in inverted commas, win the League Leaders Shield and Challenge Cup, what a season that is.
Again, you'd probably snap your hands off of that if you sort of beginning of the season. I'd take that now. And for me, I think that the whole League Leaders Shield, I think it's underplayed and it's almost dismissed as a trophy by some. For me, that is a recognition of your consistent level of performance of being the best team in that competition over the course of the season. And I think it deserves a bit more credibility and kudos than it actually carries. And we all look towards the grand. Oh yeah, but it's not the grand final. You could just cruise along. Let's use Wakefield an example where they're. I don't know the exact percentage, but I think they're somewhere around 28 points, 29 points, maybe something like that on the league ladder. So they've won just over 50% of the games, going to squeak into sixth by the looks of it. And if they put their run of performances together to win 3 more games, they could win the grand final. Now, that for me isn't the best team in the comp. That's just somebody who can peak for 3 games, just do enough to get into that 6 and then win the eliminator, win the semi-final and go on and win the grand final. Now, it's tough, I get that, and you're playing against good teams, but theoretically, you just need to win those 3 games at that particular point in the season to win the grand final.
Yeah.
But that will carry more credibility than the 27 rounds of hard grind that the best team in the league deserves to get that credit at the end of the league. And I just think there's a bit of an underplay. People comment, no doubt, whether they agree or not with that, but I think there's a bit of an undersell on what the League Leaders Shield actually stands for. And I think it should be, not just because we're on the cusp of it, by the way, but I think overall it's a recognition of the performance of everybody within the club, not just the first team players, but everybody to make that happen for the course of 27 tough rounds of Super League.
Yeah, and we talked about on the Rolling Pod last week where the League Leadership doesn't seem to have the crescendo that the Challenge Cup final has or the Grand Final has, and that's probably a lot to do with being, publicising it and making it a big thing. There's no doubt that now a lot of people will say to Rovers supporters, "Oh, you're only making a big thing of it because you might win it or you've won it." But over the course of the season, I suppose, with the Luke fixture, but over the course of the season, we're being the most consistent team, and we're going to, seal that on Thursday. And then the Super League playoffs is a separate competition. It's a separate competition, but ultimately, in our country, winning the grand final deems you, in a lot of people's eyes, to be the best team. There's a lot of conjecture behind that.
It's almost like that. The League Cup, the Carabao Cup, whatever you want to call it. It's almost that. It's got that type of kudos attached to it when you compare it against the Premier League and the FA Cup. It's just not held in the same regard. However, it is still a trophy, and yes, it's not one that's done over the course of 27 rounds or the course of a season. But it's that same vibe that you get when you talk about it's only the Carabao Cup that you've won. It's still a major trophy that's up for grabs in the season.
Yeah, and Graham, Tom Noble, he says, is our current form good enough to get us to the grand final?
No. In a simple answer, I think our performance...
And is that performances or results?
Performances. Because performances dictate results for me. And you get your performance right, the result takes care of itself. Our performance on Saturday, albeit it might just be a one-off, and I accept that. Let's see what happens on Thursday night. That will give me a clue as to where our performance levels are at. And then I might revise my thinking. But, you're only as good as your last game, Jono. So our performance level on Saturday was not good enough against Wakefield. Imagine if that was against Leigh, or if that was against Leeds, or if that was against Wigan in a knockouts, semi-finals, grand final. That level of performance will not be good enough to win a grand final.
Yeah, well, the permutations, if Rovers lose, then we've got to rely on points difference and Wigan winning their game and stuff. The easiest thing to do, Graham, is for the Robins to win their game on Thursday night. One point that has been made to me quite clearly by many supporters is that the crowd needs to play their part on Thursday night. I think there's been an expectation for a good few weeks now in terms of Rover supporters and the League Leaders Shield. I think this is a game where the supporters really, really need to turn up and back the boys, because we can't rely. Don't get me wrong, it's dampened by the fact it's a Thursday night fixture. It's not the best night for a lot of people to attend the game and really get behind the boys. But I tell you what, this is a game where from minute 0 to minute 80, we need to celebrate the performance. We need to get behind and we need to really cheer them boys on, because when this happened before,
we need to be that extra player on the pitch for, metaphorically, of course. In that we've seen it before, and again we've had I've made this point on the podcast as well before, John, about we've both been stood there when there's been 4,000 or 5,000 at Craven Park. Now we're getting 12, nearly 13. So there's a lot of new people attracted to the game now, whether they're brand new or whether they've been before, drifted away and come back, whichever is absolutely fine with me. But for those that are new to it, you haven't been through the hard. They've just enjoyed the last 3 years of semi-finals and finals and good times. This is really important. It's not an inevitability. It's about, this isn't always what happens with Rovers. You've got to absolutely do your bit to be able to savour these moments, because look, we're in a period now where it's going really well for us. We want that wave to continue for years and years to come, and we've got a part to play. It's not a case of standing back in the terraces or sitting there in your seats and just sitting back and saying, go on then, entertain me. We've got to do our bit. When things do get tough or encouragement is needed, we absolutely need to be loud and proud on Thursday night.
Yeah, and Julie Rodman, she says on Facebook, part of question time, says, who's going to start the singing on Thursday? Any volunteers? Need to be behind the lads leading or not? My voice won't carry from the west stand to the east. So over to you, Jono. Well, I will be singing loud and proud on Thursday night. I'll be backing the boys to victory. I firmly believe that we're going to seal the deal. And for the first time in Super League history, we will be lifting the League Leaders Shield, which is an amazing sight and something to savour. If you are going to the game, make sure that you are loud and proud. And remember, live, love, laugh and be happy.
Kingston Rovers fight as one for every goal and try. Since '85 we've stood our ground, though trophies passed us by. From Craven Park to Wembley Way, with East Hull grip we fight. Now we rise, our heads held high, proudly wearing the red and white.
The Robin Pod is powered by 𝗫𝗂𝗃𝗃 Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are a reputable East Hull-based car specialist and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members.